There is a silence that exists only in places untouched by time. It lingers in the stones of ancient monasteries, in the scent of pine drifting through the morning mist, and in the sound of footsteps that have walked the same path for centuries. In that silence something lives, a rhythm of breath, of prayer, of life extended far beyond what the modern world believes possible. They say the monks of the East knew a secret, not written in any book, not found in any laboratory, but alive, hidden in the pulse of the earth itself. Those who lived among them spoke of something strange, men of 80 who looked 40, eyes clear as morning light, movements slow yet filled with power, laughter that carried the weightlessness of a child. They lived beyond 100 years, not as frail shadows of themselves, but as beings calm, radiant, and whole. For generations, scholars and seekers have tried to decode their mystery. Was it the herbs they gathered from the mountain slopes, the mineral-rich waters that flowed from underground springs, or was it the rhythm of their days, the way they breathed, prayed, and waited in silence? Science searched for measurable causes, but what they guarded was not a formula. It was a way of being. Far beyond the noise of the modern world, where the hum of machines fades into the distance, a monastery still stands. Its walls, made of stone darkened by centuries of rain, hold a quiet warmth when the sun rises. The monks wake before dawn. They do not rush. The first sound is the slow beating of a gong, deep and resonant, calling them to presence. There are no clocks, no alarms, and only rhythm, breath, sound, stillness. They rise, drink a cup of warm water infused with herbs, and walk in silence to the courtyard, where the mountains open like vast wings of stone. And there they bow to the light. They call it the hour of renewal, a sacred meeting between the body and the sun. The first light carries the memory of creation, one of the elders once said. To receive it consciously is to awaken the body's ancient memory. It sounds poetic, but they believed it literally. According to the old records found hidden beneath temple floors in Tibet and the mountains of Japan, light was food, not metaphorically but spiritually, biologically. The monks practiced what they called absorbing the dawn. Standing barefoot on cold stone, eyes half closed, they breathed in the early light as though drinking it. The skin, they said, remembers what the soul has forgotten, that the body was made from the same energy that gives life to the sun. And this daily ritual was one of the first keys to longevity, but it was only one. Beneath the ritual of dawn lay another practice, one older than any language, passed through whispers, symbols, and songs. They called it the inner spring. To the untrained eye, it looked like slow breathing, but to them, it was the movement of life itself. The breath was not just air, it was the thread that tied the body to the soul. When the thread is kept pure, they said one scroll written in archaic script, the years do not take away life, they polish it. Each breath was a return, an act of remembering the sacred rhythm that the world had forgotten. If one entered their halls at dawn, one would see rows of monks seated in stillness, their spines straight, their faces calm. The silence was not empty, it vibrated. In that vibration, something happened that modern science now calls cellular renewal. Yet for them, it was never about cells or molecules, it was about harmony. The universe was seen as a vast instrument, and the human being, a note within it. Disease, aging, despair, all were signs that one had fallen out of tune. To live beyond 100 years was not to defeat time, but to flow with it so perfectly that it no longer cut the spirit. As the day unfolds in the monastery, simplicity governs everything. The meals are small, but sacred. Bowls of vegetables grown in mineral-rich soil, grains washed in spring water, and always under a single drop of oil infused with herbs that grow only at high altitudes. The monks bless their food before eating, not out of superstition but out of understanding. Thought carries energy. Gratitude changes the molecular structure of what one consumes. In modern terms, it's called the placebo effect. But they would smile at that word. To them, it was no illusion. It was alignment. The body, an elder once whispered to a traveler, believes what the spirit feels. And so everything they did, from breathing to eating to walking, was done in presence. No wasted motion, no careless word, and presence, they believed, was the greatest healer of all. For where there is presence, there is energy, and where there is energy, there is youth. The secret, however, was not only in ritual or diet, it was in their relationship with silence. In the world outside, silence is feared, filled with loneliness. But in those mountains, silence is alive, it breathes, it heals, it listens. The monks said silence was the original medicine, the mother of all cures. For it was in silence that the body remembered how to listen to itself. Modern science calls this the parasympathetic state, where healing begins. The monks called it the returning. To return to oneself, to return to the source, was to restore the original harmony of creation. Legends tell of travelers who climbed those mountains in search of miracles. Some came with disease, others with despair. Most left transformed, not because they were healed by the monks' hands, but because they were healed by their own stillness. They showed me, one traveler wrote in a faded journal discovered a century ago, that healing was not something done to me, it was something awakened within me. And yet, what they protected was not meant to be kept forever. The elders knew the time would come when the world below, tired, overworked, disillusioned by medicine and machines, would once again look upward, searching for what was lost. That time, they said, would be marked by a crisis of spirit. Humanity would know everything and feel nothing. The earth would be filled with noise, but the hearts of men would be empty. Only then would the ancient secret be remembered. It is said that one monk, before his death at the age of 123, left behind a single parchment sealed with beeswax. On it were only 7 words, written in an ancient dialect few could read. When translated decades later, they formed a phrase both simple and profound: to live long, breathe as the earth breathes. It was a reminder that longevity is not an achievement, but a relationship between breath and soil, between light and water, between man and the unseen rhythm that keeps all things alive. The monks believed the human body was not meant to decay as it does now. They spoke of an inner fire, a divine current that flows through every cell. When one lives against the rhythm of nature, waking too late, eating without awareness, living without gratitude, that current dims. The body becomes heavy, time becomes an enemy. But when one aligns again, through breath, light, water, silence, the current brightens and time softens. The body becomes light, aging becomes grace. In the small courtyard of the monastery, there is an ancient stone fountain. Its water runs cold even in summer. The monks say it flows from a spring deep beneath the mountain, a source that has never dried even in drought. They use it to wash their hands before prayer, to cook, to drink. They call it the water that remembers. They believe that water, when treated with reverence, absorbs the vibration of thought. Experiments now show that intention and emotion can alter the structure of water crystals, a fact that would have made those monks smile gently, for they always knew. Each morning they whisper into their bowls of water blessings of peace, healing, and light. Let this water carry the memory of life, things they say. Then they drink slowly, letting it merge with their breath. One elder explained, when you drink with gratitude, the body receives it as light. It travels through the cells, awakening them from sleep. In modern terms, it is hydration, but to them it was communion, a return to the sacred connection between the elements and the flesh. Every element of life, air, water, fire, earth, was seen as part of a divine pattern. To care for the body was to honor the temple that housed the eternal spark. To age was not to fade, but to polish that spark until it shone with clarity. There is a story among them, whispered during the longest nights when the wind hums through the valley, about a young monk who once asked his master why some men lived so long. The elder took him to the fountain and said nothing. He dipped his hands in the water and lifted them toward the moon. This, he said finally, is the secret, to live in such a way that even the water knows your name. The young monk did not understand then, but as years passed he came to see that the elder spoke not of fame, but of resonance. To live so in tune with life that nature itself remembers you, that was the true immortality. Those who reached such harmony did not age as others did. Their bodies obeyed a different law, one written not in biology, but in vibration. In ancient manuscripts hidden beneath temple floors, There are drawings, circles within circles, lines that mimic the spiral of galaxies and the double helix of DNA. The monks saw no difference between the two. As above, so within, they would say. The universe was not outside but inside, and the more one aligned the inner world with the outer rhythm, the more time lost its power. They said aging began not in the body but in the spirit, when one forgot the music of life. Every chant, every gesture, every sip of tea was part of that remembrance. Even the way they spoke carried rhythm. Their words were slow, deliberate, filled with pauses that let the air breathe. To speak too quickly, they believed, was to waste life, for each word carried energy, and careless speech leaked it. Silence preserved it. That too was part of their longevity. When night falls in the monastery, the air cools, the lamps glow with the light of sesame oil, and the monks gather for the final prayer. It is not long or grand. It is a single tone sung in unison, vibrating through stone and sky. That sound, they say, holds the frequency of creation. It resets the body, calms the mind, and prepares the spirit to merge with the great silence of sleep. Modern instruments, when placed within the monastery, detected a strange thing. The heartbeats of the monks, after chanting, began to synchronize. Different bodies, one rhythm. The same pattern observed in flocks of birds, in schools of fish, in cosmic waves. Unity. And unity, they said, is life without decay. Perhaps this is what they meant when they said they lived past 100, not to escape death but to fulfill life. Each breath was a circle completed. Each sunrise a new beginning of the same eternal day. The world outside has changed, yet, in the hidden corners of the earth, this rhythm continues. Monks breathing with the earth, water carrying blessings, sunlight weaving through silence. The secret they kept was never meant to be locked away. It was meant to be remembered. By you, by anyone who pauses long enough to hear the sound beneath all sounds. Because maybe, just maybe, the secret to living past 100 is not in the body at all. It's in remembering what the body truly is. A vessel of light, a ripple in the infinite ocean, a song that does not end when the singer falls silent. And so, as the dawn rises once more above those mountains, the gong sounds again. Breath, silence, water, light. The secret continues, waiting to be remembered. There is a saying among the old monasteries that time bends before truth, that the body obeys the soul once the soul remembers where it came from. The world calls it myth, but myth, as the monks believed, is only truth wearing ancient clothes. The secret they carried was not a miracle from outside, but a remembering from within. The light of the body, the harmony of the elements, and the rhythm of life all converged into one eternal law. The divine and the physical were never separate. In the silence of dawn, when the mist still clings to the mountain's skin, a bell rings, its echo rolling through the valleys like the breath of the earth itself. The monks call this sound the awakening note. It is not merely a call to prayer, but a reminder of vibration, the pulse that holds all things together. Every note, every tone, every hum is a bridge between worlds. They believe that when the human voice aligns with the natural frequency of life, the body begins to remember how to heal. Deep within one monastery, carved into the rock itself, lies a chamber they call the Hall of Breath. No light enters here except what the monks allow. In this place, they practice what outsiders once called the forbidden respiration. It is said that this ritual awakens dormant forces within the body, forces that modern science now glimpses through the study of electromagnetic resonance and mitochondrial renewal. Yet to the monks, it was never science, it was devotion. They sat in perfect stillness, backs straight, faces serene, hands resting upon their knees. The breath moved in patterns, 3 slow inhalations, 1 pause, and 1 deep release. Each movement was synchronized with an ancient chant that resonated through the body like thunder beneath water. The words were simple, yet no translation could capture their meaning. Each syllable was a key, unlocking something hidden in the blood. "We do not breathe air," one master said. "We breathe memory." For within each breath, they believed, lives the story of creation itself. Archaeologists who once uncovered fragments of these rituals dismissed them as poetic symbolism, but hidden between the lines of those parchments were diagrams, spirals, circles, and golden ratios. The monks knew what physicists would later discover, that the breath is a carrier of light, that oxygen itself is woven with the same geometry that forms galaxies. By breathing with reverence, the monks believed they could synchronize with the cosmic order, and in that harmony, the body ceased to age. They described it as awakening the inner sun. When the breath aligns, the body emits light, a subtle radiance invisible to most but perceptible to those who have learned to see. Modern instruments now call this the biophotonic field. To them, it was the aura of the living spirit. The elder monks, whose years stretched far beyond a century, glowed faintly in the dark. Not metaphorically, literally. Travelers who visited these sanctuaries recorded seeing faces illuminated by no flame, skin that seemed translucent, as if light lived within it. But this was not the secret alone. Beneath the ritual of breath lay another truth, something woven into the very fabric of their existence. The monks believed that everything one consumes carries memory. Every grain of rice, every drop of water, every particle of air bears the imprint of where it has been. To eat without awareness, said the old master Tenzin Dorje, is to take in chaos. So before every meal, they prayed not to a god outside, but to the life within the food itself. They whispered words of harmony, aligning their energy with the energy of what they were about to consume. Modern scientists call it molecular coherence, how the structure of water and organic compounds can change based on sound and intention. The monks had no microscopes, yet they knew this truth centuries ago. They taught that gratitude reorganizes matter, that thankfulness is not an emotion, but a frequency, one that restores the natural order in every living thing. Their meals were simple but sacred, bowls of fermented vegetables, mountain herbs steeped in spring water, grains left to soak beneath moonlight. They believed moonlight carried the feminine current of the earth, the soft energy that nourishes the organs and balances the heart. The sun gives energy, they said, but the moon gives renewal. Once each month, on the night of the full moon, the monks performed the ritual of the silver light. They would gather outside, their robes glistening in the pale glow, and raise bowls of clear water to the sky. In silence, they would let the moon's reflection shimmer on the surface, whisper a single blessing, and then drink. They called it drinking the reflection of the soul. Those who witnessed it described an energy in the air, subtle yet undeniable. The next morning, the monks' eyes shone with unusual brightness. Their movements were fluid, their voices serene. They claimed that the moonlight purified not the water, but the one who received it. The ritual was a symbol of remembrance, that the light above is the same light within, that what we call outside is merely the reflection of what has always been inside us. This was the second key of their longevity, purity not of body, but of vibration. To keep one's energy undisturbed was to remain aligned with the original order of life. Do not resist the flow, they would whisper, for resistance is the beginning of decay. When the heart, breath, and thought flow together, the body becomes like the mountain stream, ever moving yet ever the same. One traveler, a physician from Europe in the early 1900s, documented his time among these monks in a private journal, later found in an abandoned library in Prague. He wrote of an old monk who guided him through a ritual of renewal breathing. The physician, skeptical but curious, followed every instruction. After 30 days, he noted changes he could not explain. His pulse slowed, his sleep deepened, and his chronic fatigue vanished. The monk told him, "You have not healed yourself, you have remembered yourself." The physician returned home and lived another 40 years beyond his expected span, attributing his strength to what he called the breath that remembers. This was the revelation, the secret that science and spirit once shared but later forgot. The body is not a machine, it is an instrument of resonance. Aging, sickness, exhaustion, these are not inevitable, they are signs of dissonance. When the instrument falls out of tune with the song of creation, it falters. But when harmony is restored, vitality returns. The monks had spent lifetimes refining this harmony, understanding that energy precedes matter, that thought shapes biology, that the invisible is the source of the visible. And so their monasteries were not merely places of prayer, but laboratories of consciousness. The walls were lined with scrolls describing patterns of energy, diagrams of stars mirrored in the human form, and chants corresponding to the vibrations of different organs. Every sound, every gesture, every pause had purpose. When you move your hand, they taught, you move the universe. They mapped the body not as flesh and bone, but as rivers of light. The ancient term was nadis, channels through which life force flows. When these channels remain open, vitality circulates. When they are blocked, disease arises. The monks developed ways to cleanse these currents through sound, movement, and silence. To them, silence was not the absence of sound. It was the highest sound of all, the frequency of origin. To sit in deep silence was to bathe in creation's first vibration, the echo that birthed all life. Inside the monastery, there was a garden no outsider could enter. Within it grew plants known nowhere else. Their roots intertwined with crystals beneath the soil, absorbing the minerals of ages past. The monks tended to them as if they were guardians of the earth's memory. Each plant, they said, held a story, a lesson about the balance between life and death. They brewed teas from these leaves, not as medicine, but as conversation with nature. We do not heal with herbs, they said. We listen through them. Science would later discover that these plants contained compounds that reduce inflammation, balance hormones, and support cellular repair. Yet none of that mattered to them. What mattered was the relationship. When you thank the leaf before you drink it, one monk told a visitor, it enters you differently. The body, they said, recognizes gratitude. It changes the chemistry of digestion, the rhythm of the heart, even the expression of genes. Centuries later, geneticists would confirm that emotion and environment influence which parts of DNA activate. But these monks already knew the soul teaches the cells. And what of death? It is said they did not fear it, for they did not see it as an end. Death is only breath-changing direction, their scrolls say. Those who mastered the art of the inner spring did not die in suffering. They lay down in silence, slowed their breath, and disappeared as though merging with the light itself. Witnesses claimed their bodies grew lighter, their skin luminous, and their features serene. To live beyond 100, they said, was not to cling to life, but to live so deeply that life itself lets go gently. This is the revelation that ripples beneath the surface of all wisdom traditions, that the divine is not beyond reach. It flows in the bloodstream, vibrates in the air, and listens in every moment of stillness. The monks were not superhuman. They were reminders of what humanity once was before forgetting, beings of resonance, capable of communion with the unseen rhythm that governs stars and cells alike. When modern explorers began to document these phenomena, they sought proof. They measured heart rates, brain waves, and hormonal levels. What they found was astonishing. Monks entering deep meditation could lower their heart rate to nearly undetectable levels, increase body temperature by thought alone, and regulate immune responses with breath. Science called it anomaly. The monks called it balance. The body, said the elder, is a mirror. When the soul smiles, the mirror shines. But the true secret lay not in technique, but in perception. The monks viewed life as sacred, every moment a prayer. To walk was to meditate, to speak was to bless, to listen was to heal. They lived in a world where every heartbeat echoed the cosmos, where the divine was not above but within. And in this awareness, the illusion of age dissolved. For how can time erode that which is eternal? In their teachings, there is a passage written in fading ink. The world outside will seek longevity through struggle, through pills and formulas. But only when it learns to be still will the fountain reveal itself. That fountain, they said, is within each human chest, the quiet pulse that began before birth and will continue beyond the final breath. When one drinks from that inner spring, one no longer counts years. As the world moved forward, the monasteries retreated deeper into silence. They knew their secret was not ready for those who still sought power over nature instead of harmony with it. Yet they left traces, fragments of chants, symbols carved into stone, prayers encoded in geometry. For those who seek with pure intention, these fragments are enough to awaken remembrance. The breath, the silence, the light, they are the same everywhere. The only difference is awareness. And so the revelation is this. The monks did not conquer time. They befriended it. They lived as part of a greater cycle where death and birth, decay and renewal were not opposites, but mirrors. To them, to live beyond 100 was not an exception. It was the natural state of a being aligned with the pulse of creation. Their lives were proof of a forgotten truth. Longevity is not measured in years but in harmony. And harmony is the true medicine, the real elixir, the lost art hidden in plain sight. Far beyond the monasteries, in the restless world below, people chase health through resistance. But in the stillness of those mountain halls, men who look into the sunrise know the secret was never about fighting age. It was about remembering eternity. There comes a moment in every seeker's path when knowledge ceases to be information and becomes remembrance. It happens in silence, not when one is trying to understand, but when one finally stops. The monks called this moment the turning of the inner tide. It was when the current of life, once moving outward toward the world, began to flow inward toward the source. That was when the true transformation began. The travelers who came to the monastery seeking secrets often arrived filled with expectation. They wanted herbs, rituals, chants that could prolong their lives or reverse the signs of age. But the monks would only smile and offer them silence. Stay 3 days, and they would say, and listen. Most found it unbearable. No talk, no distraction, no escape from the echo of their own thoughts. But for those who endured, something miraculous happened. On the 3rd day, when the mind surrendered, the heart began to hear. The mountain itself seemed to breathe with them. The wind no longer sounded like wind, but like whispers. The beating of their hearts merged with the rhythm of the gong that called for meditation. Their senses, dulled by years of noise and restlessness, began to awaken to subtler things. The hum beneath sound, the warmth within cold air, the faint taste of light on their tongue. And in that awareness, they began to feel something they had forgotten existed, the quiet joy of simply being alive. The monks said that transformation did not begin with effort, but with surrender. The leaf does not struggle to return to the tree, one elder said. It simply falls. To them, the art of longevity was not about adding years, but removing resistance. Every form of suffering, they believed, was born from resistance, to time, to change, to loss, to the rhythm of life itself. When resistance dissolves, the current of vitality flows again, washing through the body like clear water through ancient stone. And that current, they taught, is what renews the cells, not the herbs, not the chants, not even the breath alone, but the harmony of surrender. Modern science now calls it coherence, the alignment between heart and mind, emotion and rhythm. When coherence is reached, the body regenerates naturally. The monks reached it not through machines, but through presence. One story tells of a novice monk who fell ill during a harsh winter. The others gathered around him, offering herbs, heat, and prayer, but the elder did something different. He sat beside the boy and said nothing. He placed a hand upon the boy's chest, matching his breath to his. Minutes passed, then hours, until the young monk's breathing slowed, deepened, and matched the elder's perfectly. The boy's fever broke before dawn. When asked how he had healed him, the elder replied, "I did not heal him. I reminded his breath of the rhythm of the mountain." To the monks, healing was never separation between healer and healed. It was the return to unity. When you are in tune, they said, everything responds. The body's waters, the heart's fire, the breath's wind, the bone's earth, all align like strings tuned to the same sacred note. That is when aging pauses. That is when the body remembers its original perfection. Deep in their teachings lies the concept of the golden breath, a state achieved when one's inhalation and exhalation merge so subtly that the boundary between them disappears. It was said that those who mastered this lived beyond decay. for they had entered the same rhythm that governs the stars, the expansion and contraction of all existence. In that moment, they were not breathing air. They were breathing eternity. Transformation, they taught, was not about changing what you are, but remembering what you were before fear began. Fear, they said, was the great corrupter, the vibration that fractures harmony. Fear of death, fear of loss, fear of not being enough. It tightens the body, blocks the breath, slows the current. The one who fears time, said an inscription on a temple wall, gives time power. To live beyond 100, the monks first had to die before dying, to release their fear of impermanence, to surrender to the cycle. Only then could they be free. Their transformation was visible. Faces smooth not because of youth, but because of peace. Eyes deep not because of knowledge, but because of presence. Every gesture was gentle, every word deliberate. They walked not as men carrying years, but as beings carried by the wind. They did not chase purpose, they embodied it. Those who studied under them for long enough began to notice changes not only in health but in perception. Colors seemed more alive, food tasted richer, the body felt lighter, the heart more open. The world, once divided into opposites, began to feel like a single flowing song. "You are not in the world," one elder whispered to his student, "the world is in you." That realization was the moment of awakening, when the boundary between self and life dissolved. The monks believed that what we call the soul is not trapped in the body, but extends far beyond it. Each thought, each emotion ripples outward, shaping the very fabric of reality. To change one's health, one must first change the vibration of thought. Gratitude expands the field. Anger contracts it. Forgiveness releases energy. Shame freezes it. Every feeling was sacred because every feeling carried energy, and energy was life. Their chants, therefore, were not songs of worship, but calibrations of energy. Each syllable vibrated through the body's channels, clearing stagnation, restoring flow. Scientists who later measured these frequencies found them to correspond with patterns of cellular regeneration. Yet the monks never spoke of science. They spoke of harmony. "You are an instrument," they said. "Play in tune, and life will sing through you forever." They even approached sleep as a sacred act. Before closing their eyes, they would recite what they called the prayer of still waters. It was a reminder that the body's repair begins in trust. "The water does not worry how it will flow," they would say. "It simply follows the slope of the mountain." Sleep was surrender, not escape. To them, the night was not darkness, but incubation, the hour when the divine sculpted the body anew. In the outer world, people sought transformation through ambition, achievement, accumulation. But here, in these mountain sanctuaries, transformation came through release of tension, of judgment, of attachment. When the vessel is emptied, the spirit can finally pour through. To hold nothing, they said, is to receive everything. The monks used to demonstrate this truth through a simple ritual with water. One would fill a bowl to the brim and try to carry it without spilling. The more he focused on not spilling, the more the water trembled and escaped. Then the master would smile, pour half of it out, and walk effortlessly across the courtyard. "The bowl that is too full cannot move," he would say. "Empty yourself, and you will flow." Transformation was not dramatic. It was not about becoming someone else, but becoming less fearful, less divided, less burdened by the illusions of control. As the monks aged, they did not resist their wrinkles or grey hair. They welcomed them as sacred symbols, signs that the spirit had lived, learned, and softened the clay of the flesh. Yet their strength did not fade. They carried heavy stones well into their 90s, walked barefoot through snow, and climbed cliffs with steady breath. For them, age did not mean weakness, it meant refinement. They said that the body is a vessel of stories. Every emotion that is not expressed becomes a shadow held in muscle and bone. These shadows, over time, form what we call aging. But when one breathes deeply, forgives deeply, and lives openly, the shadows dissolve. The energy trapped within them returns to the current of life. "Forgive," the monks would whisper to the sick, "not to be free of others, but to free your own blood." And there was another secret: joy. Not the loud joy of celebration, but the quiet joy of existence. the joy of watching rain fall, of feeling the earth beneath bare feet, of hearing a bird at dawn. That joy, they believed, was the vibration closest to the divine. A heart filled with quiet joy cannot decay. The body follows the heart, they said. When the heart smiles, the body shines. Modern medicine now studies the effects of laughter, gratitude, and awe on longevity. The monks lived it centuries ago. Their joy was discipline, not indulgence. Every day they practiced finding beauty in the smallest act, washing a bowl, folding a robe, lighting a candle. Every act, they said, is sacred when done with presence. That presence is what transformed them. In their final years they glowed, literally as though light poured from within. Those who touched them spoke of warmth, of peace, of a feeling like standing near the sun. They said that as one neared the end of life, the barrier between body and spirit thinned. Light began to leak through the skin. They called it the golden phase, the stage where the soul begins to shine through matter. Death to them was not departure, it was unveiling. And so their transformation was complete, from man to vessel, from vessel to light. When one of them passed, they did not mourn. They sat in silence, chanting softly, letting the energy of their brother merge with the wind. He has returned to the breath, they would say. For to them, all life was breath, entering, leaving, returning again. Transformation, they said, is remembering you are not separate from what you seek. The fountain of youth is not hidden in the mountains. It flows through your veins. The elixir of life is not a potion but a vibration, one of harmony, gratitude, and love. And perhaps this is why the secret could never truly be written down. Because it was never a secret of words, but of being. You cannot learn it. You can only remember it. When the last light fades from the monastery at night and the chant falls into silence, something extraordinary remains, a stillness so profound that it feels like the heart of the universe itself. In that stillness, transformation is complete. The monks disappear not by magic, but by understanding. They have become what they always were, eternal, luminous, whole. When dawn arrives in the high mountains, the light does not simply fall upon the stones, it seems to emerge from within them. It is as if the earth itself remembers the sun and glows from the memory. The monks stand barefoot before this light, their eyes closed, their palms turned upward, not to worship the sun but to merge with it. They call this hour the return of the golden breath. It is not a ritual, not even a prayer. It is communion. The light that warms the skin is the same light that burns quietly in the cells. They stand there, breathing, remembering. This is the moment when awakening begins, not in thought, but in being. The monks knew that the same energy that gives life to the world moves within them. The body is not a cage, it is a reflection. The breath, the blood, the pulse, the silence, all are mirrors of the universal rhythm. When one realizes this, the illusion of separation dissolves like mist before the morning sun. The elders said that there are two kinds of knowledge, the one that fills the mind and the one that empties it. The first builds, the second liberates. They had mastered the second. To awaken, they said, one must unlearn the noise of the world. The mind is a cloud, said Master Rinzin, who lived to be 109. When it clears, the sky has always been there. Awakening was not a sudden event, but a slow unfolding, like the opening of a lotus. For years they trained the body to listen, to hear the language of the pulse, the whisper of the wind, the silence behind sound. When the listening became total, they began to perceive what they called the luminous web, an invisible network connecting all life. It pulsed beneath the surface of things, in the water that flowed from the spring, in the soil beneath their feet, in the air they breathed. They saw it in the eyes of animals, in the rhythm of their own hearts. To live in harmony with this web was to live beyond decay. For decay, they said, was only the body's way of signaling disconnection. When connection was restored, vitality flowed naturally. The tree does not age when its roots remain deep, they would say. Only when it forgets the soil does it begin to die. And so awakening was not escape from the body, but the full inhabiting of it. They taught that enlightenment was not up there, beyond the stars, but right here, in every cell that breathes, in every heartbeat that listens. To awaken is to feel God move through your hands when you wash a bowl, said one elder, smiling faintly. It is to know that the sacred has never left you. In the world beyond the monastery, men and women chased immortality through machines, medicine, and control. But these monks found it in surrender. They learned to let go so completely that even the fear of death lost its shape. They understood that what dies is not the self, but the form through which the self experiences. The flame changes lamps, but the light remains. One night, as the wind roared across the cliffs, a young monk sat beside his teacher and asked, "Master, what is the purpose of all this? The breath, the silence, the fasting, the prayer?" The elder looked into the fire and said softly, "To die before you die." The boy frowned, but the elder continued, "To awaken is to realize that there was never anything to lose." That was the heart of their teaching. Immortality is not the endless continuation of life, but the end of fear. When fear ends, time ends with it. The body still moves, the seasons still change. But within there is peace, an unbroken awareness that observes it all without clinging. That awareness is what remains when the body grows old. It is what the monks called the watcher behind the eyes. To live from that place is to live beyond time. And perhaps that is why their faces never truly aged. The skin wrinkled, the hair whitened, but their presence remained untouched. When you looked into their eyes, you saw something ancient yet newborn, a calm so vast it felt like standing before an ocean. That calm was not absence of emotion, but mastery of it. They still laughed, cried, sang, but their emotions were waves upon a still sea. "We do not silence the storm," said one. "We become the sky that holds it." This understanding changed everything. Food became prayer, sleep became meditation, work became worship. Every act, however small, was a way of aligning with the divine pattern. When you sweep the floor, they said, you are sweeping the mind. When you light a candle, they said, you are lighting the soul. Through this awareness, even the simplest life became radiant. And so, as the decades passed, something extraordinary unfolded. They did not merely survive, and they flourished. While the world outside struggled against the tide of time, they flowed with it. When sickness came, they listened to it. "Every pain," said the healer monk Soryu, "is the body asking for balance." Instead of fighting illness, they honored it as a teacher. They would retreat into silence, breathe with the sensation, and allow the body to realign. Many times the sickness would dissolve as if it had completed its message. Science now speaks of psychosomatic healing, of the power of the mind to influence biology. But they spoke of the power of spirit to remember its own perfection. The body knows how to heal, they said. It only forgets because the mind speaks too loudly. And so awakening was a return to trust. Trust in life, trust in breath, trust in silence. The monks who lived the longest were not those who followed the most rituals, but those who trusted the most deeply. They trusted that every heartbeat was guided, every sunrise purposeful, every moment sacred. "The river does not need to know where it goes," said Master Dorje. "It trusts the mountain." To awaken was to live in that same trust, to feel that the world was not against you but with you, not chaotic but wise. This trust had physical consequences. Their bodies remained supple, their pulses steady, their sleep deep. Stress, which corrodes the body like rust, had no place among them. They did not hurry. They did not compete. They simply moved with the flow of time, like leaves carried by the current. One observer once asked a centenarian monk, "Do you ever think about dying?" The monk smiled and replied, "I think about breathing." When pressed further, he said, "When the breath ends, I will still be breathing, only differently." This calm acceptance was the fruit of awakening. Death to them was not an interruption, but a transition, a change of rhythm in the same eternal song. Their faith was not in dogma, but in direct experience. They believed that divinity was not something to be believed, but something to be felt, in the quiet between breaths, in the shimmer of light upon water, in the moment before thought arises. They trained not to control life, but to see it clearly. And in seeing, they realized that everything, joy and pain, birth and death, was already perfect. That realization is what transformed aging from a curse into a form of beauty. They saw the wrinkling of the skin as the writing of time, each line a verse in the poem of existence. They saw the slowing of the body as a deepening of the soul. The tree bears fruit when it has grown old, they said. So too does the soul. Awakening was not found in temples or scriptures. It was found in breath, in water, in stillness. To awaken was to see the divine in the mundane, to recognize the sacred in the simple. God hides in plain sight, they would whisper. In the taste of tea, in the warmth of light, in the sound of silence. They taught that when the heart opens fully, the body follows. The heart, they said, is not an organ but a doorway, the bridge between the visible and the invisible. It beats in rhythm with the pulse of the universe. When the heart is open, energy flows freely through the body, bathing every cell in vitality. This, modern science would later confirm, is coherence. To the monks it was holiness. And it was this coherence that allowed them to live so long, not because they fought death, but because they befriended life. They did not hoard vitality, they circulated it. When they gave love, they felt renewed. When they forgave, they felt lighter. When they served, they felt alive. The more you give, they said, the more the river flows through you. That was their final secret, that the key to longevity was generosity, not of money or possessions, but of spirit. A closed heart decays, said the scriptures, but an open one is eternal. To live selflessly was to remain in the flow. When energy circulates, it nourishes. When it stagnates, it spoils. They gave endlessly, smiles, silence, service, and in giving, they received life itself. In the last years of their lives, the eldest monks were said to radiate warmth even in the coldest winters. Their touch calmed crying children, their gaze soothed the anxious. Some claimed their presence alone could heal, but they never claimed power. "We are mirrors," they would say. "The light you feel from us is your own." This was awakening, to realize that the divine you seek has always been within you, waiting for your stillness. The secret of the monks was not hidden in mountains or scrolls, but in the ordinary miracle of breath. They simply never forgot it. When you breathe with awareness, when you eat with gratitude, when you walk with presence, you are remembering the same secret. You are aligning with the same rhythm that allowed them to live beyond 100. Not as old men clinging to time, but as luminous beings walking between worlds. And so, as the sun climbs higher and the chants echo across the valley, the awakening continues, not in temples of stone, but in the temples of flesh, in the quiet hearts of those who dare to remember. The light is not theirs alone. It belongs to all who listen, all who pause, all who breathe in harmony with life. For the true secret the monks kept was never about living longer. It was about living deeper, so deeply that every breath becomes eternity. There comes a silence after the chant, a stillness that feels different from all others. Not the stillness of waiting, nor of emptiness, but of completion. The monks call it the return to the unstruck sound. It is the sound that existed before the first word, before the first thought, before the first breath. When the chant ends, it remains, a hum beneath creation. It is the same vibration that lingers in the body when one finally understands not with the mind but with the soul. This is how every day ends in the monastery, not with noise, but with return. The air grows cooler. The lamps flicker with the last of the sesame oil. One by one, the monks retreat to their small wooden cells, each containing little more than a mat, a bowl, and a candle. But before lying down, each one kneels and whispers a simple prayer. Not for long life, not for strength, not for protection. They whisper, "May I remember." For remembering, they know, is everything. To remember what? That the divine never left. That breath and spirit are one. That every beat of the heart is a conversation with eternity. And as the wind slides through the cracks in the old stone walls, a strange peace fills the air, the kind that feels both alive and infinite. If one could listen deeply enough, they would swear the mountain itself was breathing. Reflection. For the monks, is not looking back. It is looking inward, the kind of seeing that reveals not the past, but the pattern. They sit at dawn by the fountain of clear water, watching the ripples form and fade, until they realize, this is what life is. A single vibration expanding outward until it returns to silence. Birth, growth, decay, renewal, all part of one divine rhythm. To resist the ripple, one elder once said, is to drown. To flow with it is to be carried home. And home, they discovered, was never a place. It was a state of being. The great awakening, after all, is not found at the end of the world, but at the center of one's own chest. When the monks closed their eyes, they saw galaxies turning where their hearts beat. To them, the body was the universe in miniature, the same geometry reflected in every star, every cell, every breath. The circle of the pulse was the same as the orbit of planets. The spiral of their hair mirrored the spiral of the Milky Way. The divine was not distant. It was intimate. It was here. That realization, that God does not exist above but within, was their greatest peace. They no longer prayed to something outside themselves. They communed with what they already were. Their prayers became gratitude, their gratitude became presence, and their presence became light. This, they said, is what it means to live past 100. Not to stretch time, but to live so fully in each moment that time dissolves entirely. One of the last living masters, an old man named Chaim Dorje, once said to a visitor, "You ask how we live so long, but you misunderstand. We do not live long, we live now, always now." Then he laughed softly, a laugh as pure as spring water. It just happens that now has no end. In that statement lies the essence of everything they taught. Life is not a line to be extended, but a moment to be deepened. Each breath is eternity entering and leaving. When you realize that, fear vanishes, and where fear ends, aging begins to lose its meaning. Reflection also meant forgiveness, not in the moral sense, but as a spiritual hygiene. "The heart cannot hold light and bitterness together," said one of the old texts. "To cling to anger is to drink poison and call it protection." And so, before sleep, the monks practiced the ritual of letting go. They closed their eyes and saw before them all those who had caused them pain. They bowed to each one and whispered, "You were my teacher." In doing so, they freed the energy bound in resentment. That energy, once released, returned as vitality. Modern researchers would later find that people who forgive live longer, have lower stress levels, and stronger immune systems. But the monks didn't need studies, they felt it in their bones. Forgiveness was a cleansing, a purification of the inner waters. The freer the heart, the purer the current of life. And gratitude, the companion of forgiveness, was their final medicine. It was woven into every act, every breath. They thanked the cold water before it touched their skin, the rice before it entered their mouth, the night before it embraced their rest. Gratitude, they said, is the prayer that never ends. It was through gratitude that they aligned with the benevolence of creation. They believed the universe listens not to words, but to vibration. Gratitude is the frequency of harmony. In their final reflections, the monks often spoke of light, not the light of fire or sun, but the inner one, the lumen naturae, the natural light of being. They said this light does not belong to anyone, it is the source of all. The body dies, they said, but the light continues through the next breath of the world. To live 100 years in harmony was not an accomplishment, it was a thank you. Each wrinkle, each heartbeat, each act of kindness was a form of praise. When the oldest monks passed away, there was no sorrow, only quiet reverence. They said that if you placed your ear close to their chest in the final moments, you could hear a faint vibration, like a distant bell, the sound of the body releasing itself back into the great song. "He has returned to the one breath," they would say, smiling through tears. For in their understanding, death was not the extinguishing of the flame, but its merging with the eternal fire. And perhaps that is the truest secret they kept, not how to live forever, but how to die beautifully. To face the final moment not with fear, but with gratitude. To let go not in despair, but in trust. "We do not prepare for death," said an inscription carved into the monastery gate. "We prepare to awaken again." Now, centuries later, their teachings remain not in books or monuments, but in the wind that moves through the mountains, in the springs that still flow with living water. Those who travel to those places say the air itself feels different, softer, wiser, as if filled with invisible prayer. Perhaps it is true. Perhaps the vibrations of their chants never faded. Perhaps they still echo in the fabric of space, waiting for hearts quiet enough to hear. And for those who listen, truly listen, the secret reveals itself anew. It whispers not of mystery, but of memory. It says, "You are not separate. You were never sick. You were never old. You are the breath that moves through all things." This is reflection, not the end of the story, but the realization that the story was never about reaching anywhere. It was about remembering what you already are, life itself, infinite and luminous. The monks knew this and lived it every day, every breath, until their presence became proof. They did not hoard their wisdom. They lived it so fully that even the stones absorbed it. Their lives became teaching. Their stillness became scripture. And even now, when the world below hums with restlessness, when fear spreads faster than light, their silence remains, calling us back. Because deep down, everyone knows. The same way a seed knows how to become a tree, the same way the ocean remembers every drop, the same way the breath knows when to leave and when to return. The truth they carried was never foreign to you. It has always been here, waiting beneath the noise, beneath the worry, beneath the layers of forgetting. You feel it when you stand before a sunrise and sense something ancient moving through you. You feel it when you place your hand on your heart and realize it beats without command. You feel it when you are still, when the world falls away and only presence remains. That is the secret the monks kept, not because it was forbidden, but because it could only be found in silence. So tonight, when you close your eyes, breathe as they breathed, slowly, consciously. Feel the air move through you, as if it were sacred wind. Listen to the faint hum beneath your thoughts. Feel the pulse in your chest, not as your heartbeat, but as the rhythm of creation itself, and whisper as they did, "May I remember." For in remembering, you awaken, and in awakening, you heal, and in healing you return, not to the monastery, but to the place within where the monks have always lived, that timeless space of peace, stillness, and light. And perhaps one day, when others look into your eyes, they too will see it, that same quiet radiance that lived in those who walked the mountains before you, the light that does not age, the breath that does not end. Because the secret was never theirs alone, it was always ours, and it waits, still, patient, eternal, in the silence between each breath.